breaking cycles without breaking yourself. What if the very thing you've been running from is the only thing that can set you free? Welcome to the Soft Girl Era podcast, where we unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom we deserve without guilt, without apology, and without explanation. I'm your host, LeAnne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French. And I'm your guide from burnout to boundaries, from doing to being, from strong to soft, and loving every second of it. Today, I had the profound opportunity to sit down with Roosa Jones, a woman whose journey from survival mode to intentional living is nothing short of revolutionary. Roos is a force, a cycle breaker, a truth teller who looked their pain in the face and chose clarity over familiarity, healing over hiding. Their work is making the world a better place by showing Black women, especially those of us who've carried everyone and everything, that we can rebuild without bitterness, even without a safety net. What Rusa shared with me, what they unpacked in our conversation, is going to shake you, challenge you, and ultimately free you. So let's dive in. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Growth feels terrible at first. It feels unfamiliar. It feels painful. It feels like you're doing something wrong because it doesn't feel like the survival patterns you've mastered. But here's what Rusa taught me, what they lived through and came out the other side to tell us. Avoiding discomfort doesn't protect you. It perpetuates the very cycles that are stealing your peace, your joy, your softness. Rusa grew up in an environment where survival was the only option. Childhood trauma, absent parents, abuse, instability, all the things that teach you to accept what's given instead of demanding what you deserve. And like so many of us, Rusa carried those survival choices into adulthood, into relationships, into parenting. They repeated patterns they didn't even know they were repeating. But here's where Rusa's story becomes a masterclass in courage. They stopped running. They leaned into the discomfort. They unpacked the childhood trauma instead of passing it down. And that decision to face what hurt is what broke the cycle. Let me tell you about someone who walked this same path. Born to a teenage single mother in rural Mississippi, no stable parental support, poverty, abuse. Oprah Winfrey's childhood was a textbook case of survival mode. She endured sexual trauma by family members, verbal and physical mistreatment, early teen pregnancy. She navigated addiction environments and felt, in her own words, like she was either too much or not enough. Sound familiar? But Oprah didn't stay there. She didn't let the familiarity of pain become her permanent address. She faced the discomfort head on. She went to therapy. She took accountability for how her wounds impacted the people around her. She rejected the familiarity of instability and chose clarity instead. And from that pain, from that intentional decision to sit with what hurt, she built an empire. She launched the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1986, became the first Black female billionaire, and used her platform to normalize mental health conversations in Black communities. She reduced stigma. She inspired resilience models across the globe. She showed millions of people that you don't have to stay stuck in survival mode just because that's where you started. Oprah's story mirrors Rusa's journey perfectly. Both of them learned that growth demands sitting with the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. Both of them discovered that the discomfort you avoid today becomes the prison you live in tomorrow. Now, let's talk about Viola Davis. Viola grew up in poverty with an alcoholic father and a neglectful home. She faced grooming like family betrayals and carried survival patterns into adulthood, patterns that strained her early relationships and threatened her marriage. She met her father late in life after a childhood of instability, echoing the same absent parent and abuse dynamics that Rusa experienced. But Viola made a choice. She embraced discomfort through therapy. She took public accountability for generational impacts. She owned the difference between her intentions and her impact, and she rebuilt intentionally. Viola went on to become an EGOT winner, Tony, Emmy, Oscar, Grammy, a triumphant sweep that captivated audiences worldwide. Her raw portrayal of trauma's carryover in Fences showed us what happens when you stop running from your story and start owning it. And in her memoir, Finding Me, she advocated for Black mental health, challenging stigma, and promoting culturally safe healing in Hollywood and beyond. Viola's story aligns perfectly with what Rusa shared, leaning into discomfort from family trauma to break cycles for Black women professionals. She showed us that you can heal family rifts by owning your intentions versus your impact. She emerged stronger, modeling non bitter reinvention. She proved that you don't have to hate yourself for what survival taught you. You just have to own it, learn from it, and choose differently moving forward. And then there's Taraji P. Henson, raised by a struggling mother with addiction issues, no father figure, early relational traps. Taraji survived suicide attempt, level depression, post abuse, and absent support. She repeated patterns in relationships that distanced her son, feeling the full circle of isolation that so many of us know too well. But Taraji chose discomfort via therapy. She rejected shame for accountability. She rebuilt intentionally, prioritizing clarity over familiarity. She delivered a powerhouse performance in Empire, earning Golden Globe nods and launching TPH Hair, boldly claiming her worth amid industry bias. And she founded the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation for Black mental health access, combating stigma and provider shortages to support community resilience. Taraji's story exemplifies Black mothers breaking trauma cycles through intentional discomfort facing. She mended her mother son bond. She's thriving professionally. And the key lesson she teaches us is this: motivation exists, but growth requires embracing the unfamiliar. Here's what Rusa, Oprah, Viola, and Taraji all have in common: they leaned into discomfort for real growth. They took accountability without self shame, and they chose clarity over familiarity. These are the three key lessons Rusa shared with me, and I want to break them down for you because they are absolute game changers. First, lean into discomfort for real growth. Growth often feels unfamiliar and painful at first, but avoiding it perpetuates cycles of survival mode choices. Facing it intentionally breaks those patterns. Rosa did this by unpacking childhood trauma instead of repeating relational mistakes. And here's the thing: we've been taught that discomfort means danger, but discomfort can also mean transformation. It can mean you're finally doing something different, something that serves you instead of just keeping you alive. Discomfort is the doorway to freedom. But most of us have been slamming that door shut our entire lives because we're terrified of what's on the other side. What if what's on the other side is peace? What if it's joy? What if it's the version of you that you've been longing to meet? Second, take accountability without self shame. Acknowledge the impact of your wounds on others, like Rosa facing how their survival choices affected their children, while releasing hatred for parts of yourself shaped by unchosen circumstances. This fosters healing and intentional rebuilding. You don't have to hate yourself for what survival taught you. You don't have to carry shame for the ways you protected yourself when no one else would. You just have to own it, learn from it, and choose differently moving forward. Accountability without shame is the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. Third, choose clarity over familiarity. Survival teaches us to accept what's given, but thriving requires demanding what you deserve. Rusa shifted from familiar instability to deliberate choices, showing Black professionals they can rebuild without bitterness, even without a safety net. Familiarity feels safe, but it's not always healthy. Clarity feels scary, but it's where your freedom lives. And here's the hard truth: you will never heal in the same environment that made you sick. You will never thrive in the same patterns that kept you surviving. Clarity demands that you choose yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unfamiliar, even when everyone around you is still operating from survival mode. Now, let's talk about the research because this isn't just anecdotal. This is backed by data. Only 1 in 3 Black adults needing mental health care receive it. 1 in 3. And why? Because of barriers like higher stigma, provider bias, misinterpreting physical symptoms of depression, and a psychology workforce that's just 5% Black versus 80% white. This leads to incomplete care and perpetuated cycles mirroring Roosa's unmet needs. Culturally informed approaches validate experiences shaped by inequities, building resilience beyond individual effort. This is why Roosa's work matters. This is why breaking cycles without breaking yourself is not just a personal journey, it's a community imperative. It's a cultural necessity. It's a matter of survival versus thriving for an entire generation of Black women who deserve better. So, what would happen if more people, more organizations adopted this perspective? If more Black professionals and leaders embrace leaning into discomfort to break trauma cycles, like facing survival patterns without shame, stigma would drop. Mental health care access would increase from the current 1 in 3 rate. Culturally competent support would rise, reducing misdiagnosis and building trust. Communities would foster resilience environments that validate experiences shaped by inequities, preventing generational disconnection. Imagine that. Imagine a world where we're not just surviving but thriving, where we're not just strong but soft, where we're not just carrying everyone else, but finally carrying ourselves with the same care. Rusa's journey reminds us that we don't have to keep wearing the cape. We don't have to keep being strong in ways that break us. We can release the roles, the masks, the responsibilities we were never meant to carry. We can redefine strength as softness, as rest, as boundaries, as saying no without guilt. We can embrace our soft girl era not as a trend, but as a lifestyle rebellion, a deep exhale from the Superwoman script, a quiet but powerful return to softness, rest, self trust, and radical joy. And here's the thing about Rusa's story, about Oprah's story, about Viola's story, about Taraji's story. They didn't wait for permission, they didn't wait for a safety net. They didn't wait for the world to be ready. They chose themselves. They chose healing. They chose clarity. And in doing so, they gave us permission to do the same. So I'm asking you today, what uncomfortable truth are you ready to face? What cycle are you ready to break? What clarity are you ready to choose? Because here's what I know for sure: the world doesn't need another version of you in survival mode. The world needs you whole. The world needs you healed. The world needs you soft, rested, clear, and free. And it starts with one decision, one uncomfortable truth, one moment of choosing clarity over familiarity. Roosa Jones is living proof that you can break cycles without breaking yourself. Oprah is living proof. Viola is living proof. Taraji is living proof. And you can be living proof too. This week, I said, I want you to sit with one uncomfortable truth from your past. Don't run from it. Don't shame yourself for it. Just sit with it and ask yourself, what clarity does this give me now? What pattern am I ready to break? What version of myself am I ready to meet on the other side of this discomfort? Because that's where your freedom lives. That's where your joy lives. That's where your soft girl era begins. The cape is optional. The healing is not. The choice is yours. And the time is now.